Welcome to Emotional Intelligence Simplified. I am Angela Muhaki, and today I'm also joined again by Vicky Karuga. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
So as we start this off, let's start with, let's just remind our listeners, what is emotional intelligence?
The last time we talked about emotions, and we're still going to talk about emotions. So from our intellectual description last time, we said it was the ability to recognize, understand,
and manage
our emotions.
Yes.
I'm going to add the word express with and reason with emotions within ourselves and others.
So we're expressing and reasoning with our emotions.
Yes, another definition.
It's a new twist.
But then let me tell you, if you Google the definition of EI, depending on who you follow, whose work you think is comprehensive enough, you'll find quite a few definitions out there on what emotional intelligence is.
But they all revolve around understanding and managing.
Those are the key words: understanding, recognizing, perceiving, managing.
So it's all about managing and understanding and, of course, using the knowledge that we have.
Yeah.
Now, I had an interesting encounter last week where someone asked me, what is the difference between emotional intelligence and emotional quotient? Is it quotient?
Quotient. Yeah.
IQ, EQ, and EI.
I think the last time we talked about IQ. Did we talk about IQ and EQ?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
So where do we start?
Let's start with IQ and EQ. So IQ has to do with cognitive abilities, to do with the mind, things like math, vocabulary, verbal prowess, reasoning with those kinds of numbers that we have.
Okay.
And usually the IQ assessments that we encounter really measure more our cognitive abilities.
Okay.
Whereas EQ is about our emotional abilities, what we've been saying, our ability to perceive, our ability to recognize, then our ability to understand, our ability to manage. So that's where the domain of EQ.
EQ.
Yes.
Now, between EQ and EI.
To be really honest, I don't think
they're related. The difference is the same.
And we have different schools of thought. Again, go onto the internet, Google for yourself, make up your mind. But for purposes of this discussion and for purposes of where Genos, which is a group we represent, stand, EQ will more often than not refer to quotient.
Okay.
And quotient here is like we're measuring your propensity or your potential.
Aha.
Yeah.
So that is the act of measuring in EQ. So what about in EI?
EI now is the intelligence. So how are you showing up already? How are you demonstrating EI? Not how likely are you to demonstrate EI. It is how are you at the present demonstrating emotional intelligence.
And therefore, through EI, we also learn how to develop and hone our skills.
And grow better at this intelligence.
Okay.
Again, schools of thought, I am not the authority. You can make up your own mind. Yeah.
So let us look at, if we think about it, how is emotional intelligence applied at work?
I think I want to start from a very basic understanding of what our emotions really are.
Okay.
There's a lot of information, again, on emotions, how they're made, what parts of the brain. And there is a series called Human that I always tell guys to watch if they can. That gives a lot of information about our bodies and what happens and so many things. Some of them really relevant, but very interesting. So when 1990s, so to speak.
Yes.
That was when this research in the realm of emotional intelligence, that there were abilities that had nothing to do with our intellectual capacity that had everything to do with how successful people were being, both at work, in their relationships, and in life in general. And there were people talking about this, scientists, but the person who really put it on the map was Daniel Goleman. And he did a book that is very widely read, a social science book called Emotional Intelligence, actually, I think it was called.
Okay.
So this book was the one that then put it out there that there are abilities that can be learned, just like math and English, that have more impact on whether a person is likely to be successful at what they do.
So success is not just in terms of how intelligent you are and whether you did science. So there are other elements that are not intellectual that can help people be more successful, is what we're saying.
Exactly. And how they got this information was by studying people who they rated as being quite successful in life. And then they noticed that there was a discrepancy there because whereas the people who had been highly rewarded for their mental capabilities should have been, again, at
most successful.
Exactly. It wasn't the case. And there seemed to be something else.
So that makes us think of like people like Virgin Atlantic. I know that, he says he had dyslexia.
Yeah.
Richard Branson.
Yes.
And other things, and like school, he didn't go too far. So that goes the opposite of how we say somebody's very clever and went to Harvard and did whatever. So that shows a distinction. So it's not all about how many marks you got and where you went. There's another element that has made people successful.
Yeah. And in fact, even in his book, he goes on and states that some of the children at that time who were never praised for the work that they did in terms of, being number one.
In school.
In school, yes.
Right. Academics,
yes, actually. They started understanding that they needed something else to be able to,
to make it.
Yeah, to make it. So kick in negotiation skills, kick in being able to work with people better, kick in collaboration. They started understanding these skills at a fundamental level for survival. Do you see?
So yeah, I know I'm not bright at maths, but I can do other things to grow.
I can also talk to other students and
to help me do my homework.
And I need people, so I want to start this small business. I need to be able to talk to people, bring them together, sell them my idea, even if sometimes half the time I don't believe it myself. So there are all these things that we're getting very good at.
Okay.
Yeah, and so started the study towards these abilities. So in the 2000s is, I think, what they call the era of validation. So yes, we had the theories coming in
now we want to confirm what we think.
Now we want to confirm. So this is where you'll find a lot of research around salespeople with higher EI sell better, obviously. Leaders with higher EI are more purposeful and more engaging. They have a more engaged workforce, and so on and so forth.
So I remember there's a quote, I don't know, I'm sure you know it. It talks about how IQ gets you the job, but what happens?
EQ gets you promoted. And I do believe this quote must have come from this particular era, because that's what the research was showing. Yeah. And so within the 2000s came the 2010, 2011, 2012. And here we really start to see people studying the brain, getting deeper. This is why you see the neuroscience of emotions and all those things coming up. They could be as well earlier on in the previous decade, but here's where books are released. People are talking fundamentally how emotions really, really fundamentally affect the way we make decisions, first and foremost. So people are beginning to really understand the intricacies around why is it that emotions are really so important in our day-to-day life. Yeah.
You are listening to Emotional Intelligence Simplified. Wow, so that's where it came from. So around 2011, 12, 13, now the thing is the talk of the town. You're saying now it's even being researched on by scientists. Because when you talk about neuroscience, I'm thinking these are some very serious people.
They're very serious people. There's a lot of hard data. There's a lot of all these things, scans they do on the brain. But even to validate your thinking, just think about how big business is now using this research on emotions to grow their game.
Tell us about that.
Look up at the digital sector, look at the banking sector, look at the advertising sector.
Yeah, it appeals to emotions. We're showing happy, like when you're selling insurance, you're trying to show happy families.
And they know the times of days when these things happen. They do a lot of extensive studies as to what kind of messaging, what kind of words to use, for instance. So if you think just
so they're trying to
second,
influence us through our emotions.
It's big business. It's big business.
It is. I hadn't thought about it. Wow.
If you want any other validation, this thing is so important that businesses pay attention to how they can generate certain emotions in you so that you can make a certain decision about a certain product.
Wow. I hadn't put that together, and that's huge impact. Because they think about it, because here they research even into colors, music, what to play where, what even to place where in a supermarket. You're correct. So this is big business, absolutely.
Yeah. So, what else do you want to know?
So now we need to think about, so that is emotional intelligence and why it's important and how it has and how it's literally being used even against us. I'm not against us.
Is it against us?
No, it's being used on us to influence. Okay, let's say it's even being used to influence what we buy, where we stay, what we do. So let's look at it in terms of emotional intelligence. If we're to look at it at work, how does it work? I used the same word twice, but yeah. So how does it work in the workplace?
The breadth of that subject is so wide, and I'm hoping the podcast will be as wide as the breadth of that subject. And there's a lot of articles, books, and so many things that have been written as to how EI affects us at the workplace.
Yes.
But at a very basic level, let's explore what we call the science of emotions. Yeah. And there was someone, I think I should remember who it was, I'll put it in the chat, who stated that when we experience pleasant emotions, so we tend to be broader in our thinking because we see possibility. We're happy. So if, case in point, Mwehaki, you come to me when I'm feeling happier, I'm more likely to receive what you're saying openly.
Yes, that is true.
I'm more likely to even collaborate with you, debate with you from a certain point of view. Yeah.
Yes, I even thought about myself when things seem positive, your brain is willing to go the extra mile.
You are willing to go the extra mile.
I am willing to go the extra mile. I am willing to go far. Yeah, that's true. So, if it's a positive reaction, I'm open. I think the key word there is being open.
It's being open.
Yeah.
So case in point, if I walk into the reception of our office and the first person I meet tells me, Vicky, you're looking good today. I love the skirt. And this is said by someone who I also like. I mean, that helps a lot. The next person that I meet is likely to receive a smile from me.
Absolutely.
For no reason.
Yeah.
And possibly a good morning. Yeah, with a bright and chirpy. And if anyone in my department walks in at that point with a problem, I am more likely to listen. I am more likely to engage in that particular person. I am more likely to engage in problem solving with that particular person. I'm more likely to make that decision to engage.
Because, I'm feeling positive.
Yeah.
You have good energy around you.
Yeah.
Okay. So it depends. So does that mean it depends on who you meet at the door?
No, not necessarily. But now let's think about the other side.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we are feeling unpleasant emotions, the more unproductive emotions, when we're feeling afraid, unappreciated, unloved, unvalued, those are big ones, uncertain, that's also an unpleasant emotion, then we experience the world more worried, so to speak.
Yeah.
And Usually they say that the brain tends to be very efficient. So it looks for efficient ways to deal with problems. And actually it deals with problems from memory most of the time.
Experience,
yeah. So it engages in a very simplified way of saying fight or flight.
Yeah, because this is bad. Do we run away or do we fight? Okay.
Or do we fight? So we go to survival. So we are not thinking creatively anymore. We're thinking what is the most efficient way of
finishing this task or accomplishing what I have to do.
Exactly. So I walk into the reception, and again, a guy I like tells me my skirt is possibly the worst he has seen in the recent history. And he doesn't understand how I could wear something like that. How could you even wear
this?
To work.
Morale shoots down.
Nerve. Morale shoots down. As much as you say it doesn't affect you, you already get yourself guarded.
Yes.
The next person you meet, how likely are you to say good morning?
Not.
How likely are you to smile at them?
Hey, me, I'm looking for a way to get to my corner of where I sit and just do what I have to do and get out.
And now at the workplace, when someone now comes to you at that particular point with a real problem that they need your help, how likely are you to make a decision to help them fully engage and immerse yourself in that problem?
Me, I'm still stuck on my skirt. I don't have time to leave me. I'm still thinking, do I need to sneak out and change? Your problems are yours, man. Me, I have my own. Leave me alone.
So even if you think about parenting, when your child throws a tantrum, you immediately get on alert mode.
Yeah, you're like, oh no. So what do we do now?
Your creative mind is out the window, so you do either what you've always done, or you tell the child to go to their room, whatever it is. Yeah. And sometimes taking a time out is the best thing to do, because you cannot be really creative sometimes if you have not experienced this emotion before and made conscious decisions to treat it different. Yeah. So case in point, if every time you experience a tantrum from a child, it's either beat,
scream at them,
shout at them, all things that don't really solve anything. It doesn't help. So when you become cognizant and aware of the fact that your reaction and the impact it's having on the child, then you begin to rethink. But that only takes time, because now you're moving into creativity. How can I solve this problem better? But for a while, you're in survival.
Will go through the same cycle continuously. Then you discover it doesn't work.
Yeah, you discover it doesn't work. So that's just a very basic look at how, when we experience pleasant emotions, last time we talked about the good boss and the bad boss and how they made us feel. I think it was Maya Angelou. What did she say? Is it Maya Angelou?
Yeah, that people may forget what you said to them or did to them, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
They will never forget how you made them feel.
Yes.
So the way that I show up to you, Wehaki, today, will determine how you feel.
And will also determine how I respond to you.
How you engage back at me.
Yeah.
And that will possibly determine the outcome of that relationship for that moment.
Wow. It sounds so simple when we put it that way.
Yet it isn't.
It isn't, because, when you think about, when you talk about emotional intelligence in the workplace, sometimes we have to work, we have to pay bills. Mm-hmm. How much can you manage there? Mm-hmm. How do you manage them? Because home is different. It's you and your people, and you have to learn to live together.
Yeah, true.
You don't always pick. You really don't have a choice with who you work with.
Yeah, true.
So it's. I think there's a bigger challenge there.
And yet there sometimes are always people who seem to navigate
and survive.
And even
not even survive.
And even
they
do more than
well.
survive. They thrive. Yes, they thrive. So it can be done.
So how do they do it? How do I get to know who I am, where I am, what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm. So usually we talk about self-awareness as being the gateway to emotional intelligence. And self-awareness in itself is not a small thing. It's a lifelong journey of self-awareness. You discover you've changed at some point. Likes are changing, values are changing as we grow. Your circumstances are constantly changing. So constantly reevaluating yourself and recalibrating yourself is a very important superpower, especially now where we are bombarded by information left, right, and center.
Because right now we don't even know. And then in this age of what we've been through through the COVID experience, you thought your life was guaranteed. You thought certain things were what mattered most. But now we've learned new things. So we have to start with the self.
Yes. And even why I mentioned it is now more important than ever is consider this. And I usually use this example because for me, it's what makes sense to how erratic our lives have become. My father or mother, for that instance, they woke up in the morning. I am a born 70s child, so you can fill in the year. So they woke up in the morning. They did breakfast.
Yes.
They sent the kids to school. There was 1 or 2 newspapers that they found in the office. So they left the house and went to either the office. My mom was a nurse. She went to hospital. They worked from 8 to 5 or whatever that shift was.
Yes.
They did not receive a single phone call from the house unless it was an emergency. Because there was only one phone.
And we had, what were they called? Landlines.
We had landlines.
Yes.
Yeah. Any person who called the office phone was calling for official work, usually most of the time. We had one source of news, which was either during the day, which was
the radio.
And also we had the TV, actually.
Which would come on at 5.
TV would come on at 5. And then we had the paper. And that was it.
Yes.
Finished. So fires were being lit very few times. Yeah. So any grave news was communicated.
1 o'clock news on radio. Exactly. Yeah, the big things, you'd hear them, through those mediums.
And then they would come home, maybe they'd pass by to be their friends, for those of them who did things like that. But then look at your life right now. First and foremost, your life is in a daily crisis because your phone is giving you daily crisis messages. Every hour, every minute. Google is sending you alerts. Twitter is sending you alerts. Social media, WhatsApp is sending you alerts. As in, you're constantly living anxiously. Yeah?
Yes.
Because of all this negative...
all these things around you.
All these things around you.
Or distractions, because sometimes they're not negative, but it's a distraction.
Yeah. So you're constantly engaging in one thing or another throughout your whole day. Not to mention you have other things to do with work, your targets, your what. If you're a family person, you have children who are relying on you for this thing or the other thing. You have Netflix if you want to watch movies until CG when it is there.
You can binge watch.
You can binge watch. You can sleep. I don't know at what time. You can wake up. I don't know at what time. So there is a lot really going on, and that touches even on our resilience.
So we don't really have much order anymore. Because I think we had systems and orders as 70s kids. Yes, there were systems in place. But now, you can watch TV 24 hours. Like you're saying, so I think we have too much information. And then we're juggling more things. Because you have work, you have your family, you have self-development, you also I don't know, you have too many things.
You have a lot of things. So now more than ever, self-regulation becomes very, very important. So you're the one to regulate for yourself the hours of TV, the hours of this, how much time am I spending on development? It now comes back to you because everything is suddenly available to you. Self-regulation in itself is not very easy to do if you've not done some work in self-awareness.
You are listening to Emotional Intelligence Simplified. So it starts there. Self-awareness, because how do I know whether I'm not getting enough sleep or am I being distracted? So so to regulate, you must be aware.
Yeah. So we might show up in offices and, sometimes when we facilitate, we say that a lot of things affect the way that you show up at the office. Things such as sleep that we take so much for granted will affect the quality of output you have in the office. Things such as relationships, your investment into them will affect the quality of your output. So when you start thinking about these basic things that we sometimes neglect to take care of, then you start seeing how, if we are not aware, if we're not intentional, how we are affecting our businesses, how we are affecting the people in our businesses, in the companies that we work, and in the things that we do.
Okay, so let's explore self-awareness and understand it. And, so how do we look at self-awareness?
So for self-awareness, you have to really start thinking about and taking more interest in how you experience the life around you.
Okay.
And largely, you will notice that how you experience the world around you elicits certain emotions in you. In fact, every time I speak about emotions, the guys are like, those are emotional, nini emotions, this and the other.
You women, those are women's things.
Yes. And I keep reminding them, whether you acknowledge them or not, they are part of you. And you experience life through a series of emotions. So whether you're aware of them or not, they are part of who you are. But the minute you start realizing and taking emotions for what they are, which is points of information. So an emotion has a positive intention, always has a positive intention. Whether it's a good emotion, according to you, or an unpleasant emotion, it has a positive intention.
Okay, that's a new one. I didn't think not pleasant emotions had good intentions. So that's quite different. Okay. So why does it have a good intention? Yet I receive it in a not good way.
Because it's giving you information. It's possibly, for example, if you're aware and intentional and you're walking into a room and you suddenly feel the pit of your stomach do something.
Twist or somersault, yeah.
So, and by experience, you know that tells you that you're dreading the situation. So you're feeling a certain kind of way towards this particular situation. You can ask yourself why. Is it the people there in that room, or is it the topic we're discussing, whatever that is? And then
you can question. Try and understand why I'm feeling uneasy, why I'm suddenly feeling agitated.
Yes.
So is it I didn't feel properly prepared? Is it they don't look receptive? Okay.
And there are quite a few people who just, walk into meetings, walk out, not really understanding what is happening within them. And there are also some who are also very aware, and they will make a mental note that I'm unprepared, and so that's why I'm feeling this way. But then the thing is, when you notice that emotion, the second part is very, very critical. What will be the impact of this emotion to the conversations I'm going to have? And that impact, is that what is desired? Is that the outcome we desire, or I desire out of the outcome, of this particular situation? So if I walk in there with fear, I need to ask myself, am I likely to keep quiet during this conversation because I am not prepared?
Yes.
And that means that the outcome is someone else is going to take over. Is that something that is okay with me? Maybe yes or no. Who knows?
Maybe not, yeah.
Maybe not. If it's important to me, what do I need to do to ensure that I am part of this conversation?
I need to calm down.
Have I noticed that when I'm unprepared and I enter a room and someone says something to me, I view it as a challenge and immediately challenge them back, making that particular conversation spiral down to areas that we don't want it to go. So there's a lot of thought and reflection around these things. Obviously, not at the first time or the second time.
But with time.
So
you have the wisdom.
You have the wisdom, and you see people practicing this all the time. You see lawyers practicing before a mirror all the time and addressing situations that they think might come across because they know they need to be prepared. We see airlines doing this very intentionally by giving their pilots scripts and lists of things to do when they get into trouble and making them rehearse it over and over again, because they know the minute things start to go wrong, the human mind is to freak out.
So you have to give it the capacity to cope.
We have to give you the capacity
so that we don't panic. We know in case of this, we're prepared.
Yes, and we give you a list that you can follow. We take you through it so many times that it becomes second nature. When something happens,
You just switch.
it kicks in and you're able to go through a certain set of instructions with more calmness, so to speak, that is required for that particular situation than if you didn't have anything. There we're leaving you to chance, we're hoping perhaps you'll be able to handle the situation, you're resilient enough or not.
I think I like that, especially with the illustration of the pilot, because automatically I have understood it. That we also need to have a way of being aware within ourselves that we say, in a bad situation, do this. Deal like this, so that it's no longer, like you said, if you're not ready, you might be in a point where you become confrontational rather than address the issue properly. So we know, don't let things go south. Breathe in, breathe out, do something. So that's how our self-awareness comes in.
Yeah, our self-awareness helps us rewrite certain narratives about ourselves that are not yielding positive outcomes, both for us and also for other people.
Now, I remember reading something about SCARF. Now, what is SCARF is all about?
Okay, so there's a guy called, I think, David Rock, and he's done quite a bit of work under the neuroscience of the brain. And what he tells us is that in our everyday experience, in the same way I've said we encounter pleasant emotions and unpleasant emotions.
Yes.
There are things that we encounter every day that yield pleasant emotions. Therefore, we see the event as rewarding and therefore engage, gives us feel-good hormones. Or unpleasant emotions, therefore yielding our need to survive, and therefore making us approach that situation from a less open point of view. So the first one in SCARF, which is an acronym for certain things, S stands for status. So tell me about status, Muhaki.
So status about what? How I feel, where I belong, how I carry myself. Is that what we mean?
By status, we mean how important we perceive ourselves to be vis-a-vis someone else.
Ooh,
Yep.
interesting.
So when we are with someone else and we perceive that their status is less important than ours, we're more likely to be at ease. We're more likely to explore the world with them, be more gentle. But when we with someone who we perceive their importance is
Higher.
that's when we are more guarded. That's when we are guessing our every move. That's when we are, so to speak, trying to be on our best behavior. In itself a very limited way of thinking, don't you think?
It is, but I guess maybe you feel intimidated or not. You're not sure. So I guess if you don't feel, would it also depend on how they make you feel?
Exactly. That is secondary. So first, you've already made a judgment
About how I am versus this person.
Yes, and sometimes it is the onus of the person to short circuit that judgment and make you feel
At ease.
at ease. Yeah. So it's very important if you consider you as a leader, you as a manager, and consider that most people are experiencing you this way. Are you pushing that narrative further by the things you're doing or saying, or are you making people feel safe enough to experience you both as the leader, but have the comfort of also being able to be more open with you, more human with you?
So can they see the human side of you? Can they see the you other than your title? Because sometimes you have boss, our manager. So maybe you're stuck on manager. You don't get to see the human behind the manager. Okay.
So that's just one aspect. The second aspect for SCARF is certainty. Not knowing is not a very good place to be for anyone.
Okay.
We like to know. We like to be able to predict or predetermine situations. So case in point, when we don't give clear messages about who we are, the gossip grapevine is very rich.
They will embellish.
Well, because they have to make meaning of who you are.
Because we must try and break you down.
Yes.
I need to know what you are. So if you don't tell me, I'll create my own story.
And if you give me a certain task to do, and you don't give me a clear set of instructions to do it, you leave me in a not a very rewarding position, and have to start guessing, do you want to do this, do you want to do the other? And so again, at the workplace, are we giving clarity with the things that we're doing?
Directions, instructions.
Very, very important. Very, very important. How you do that means that the other person will perceive their interaction with you as being more rewarding because they feel supported by you.
Okay. So that's what certainty is. Yeah, because you can't just tell me, go and do up the room. How
and we
do
know
you want
people
me
who
to
do that.
Yeah, just say, I want to see that room done. In what way?
Yeah. So guys are working helter-skelter, feeling, I don't even know what
filling
I'm
in the
supposed to
blanks,
do.
guessing. Are we painting? Are we carpeting? What are we supposed to do?
Even when you're presenting, it's easier to present. Someone tells you, I want 1, 2, 3. So you say, for this and this and the other. As opposed to, okay, I thought maybe perhaps it's a very different place you're coming from.
True.
And the third one is autonomy. Autonomy really refers to the degree of control we feel we have. So some people are very good at it. Even when you don't have that much latitude, they will keep asking you questions as they give you instructions. And so you feel like you're a little bit of a part of the process and how the process is going.
Oh,
and
as
you
in getting
engage more.
feedback from you.
Exactly. So what do you feel about this? This is what we're meant to do. And you find that they engage back at you because they're feeling they have a degree of control. Yeah.
Okay.
And when people feel micromanaged, you hear it all the time. They're not going to give you their best work, are they?
So that was autonomy. What comes next?
The rest is R is for relationships. We're creatures of tribes, of habits. And that's why you see politics in organizations, because people form cliques, form silos. So how are you being able to work into your relationships, to be relational, to be seen as part of the clan, or rather to be